Today, I feel a lump in my throat even telling you about this, is my firstborn's birthday. I had the privilege of raising two darling daughters that are young adult women now. But as I look at my oldest daughter with her darling bouncing baby boy, I love to be able to tell her when she tries to describe how she feels about him, I love to say, "Oh, baby, that's how I feel about you." Even now. I'm tender about her birthday because early that next morning, we'd had so much company on the day that she was born. Keith and I both have large families, and all of them were there. We also have a large church family, and all of them were there. And we were the first of our friends to start having these babies. So everyone gathered around. I remember thinking to myself after I'd been through the trauma of childbirth, I cannot believe they did not come to see me after what I've been through. 22 years old and went through the shock of my life. I felt like they should have put one of those things they put on horses when they win the race, those rose wreaths. Something. So with so much company around the room, we'd all had prayer together. But then come about 4 a.m, when everybody was gone, of course I'd not slept a wink all night, they brought her to me. And they laid her right on that hospital bed with me, and then the nurse left. She said, "I'll leave the two of you alone." And I want you to just get the picture, because if you've had an infant, you know what I'm talking about. I wanted to see her. I'd not really gotten a chance to take a good look at her. And so I just began unwinding her. You know what I'm talking about? Where you think they're gonna have to wear this to college, obviously. Where you're just unwinding, and then you look at their little toes and their tiny little feet, and she was staring at me. The tears were just pouring from my cheeks, falling right down on her little belly. And I said to her, "Hi, my name is Mom." And it was the most beautiful word. And I looked at her, and I wept, and I couldn't have articulated then what I know that my soul was saying, but I wouldn't have been able to find exactly the words. But I lay there with that little thing in my arms and thought, how could anything this pure come from anything this impure? I had a sense of impurity from the time I was a little bitty girl because of my early childhood victimization. So I had this overwhelming sense of shame from my earliest memories. And then, you act out on that, and you're just a mess. I was a wreck. I was just a wreck. And I looked at that tiny little thing, and suddenly, what I was going to do with my past took on a whole new meaning. I read a book a number of years ago by Gilda Radner, who was in the early Saturday Night Live fame. She's long since passed away. But she wrote a book before she did called It's Always Something. It's Always Something. She tells a story in it that was printed as an excerpt in the paper at that time. And she told about growing up and having a family pet that was going to have puppies. And somehow the family pet got too close to the lawnmower and lost its back legs. And they took the family pet into the vet and said, "What are we to do? Must we put her to sleep? After all, she's going to have these puppies. Can we somehow still have the puppies?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to tell you," it was early on, he said, "No, absolutely not. If we don't maintain the life of the dog, the puppies aren't going to make it. But here's what we can do. We can sew her up, and she will teach herself to walk." And they said, sure enough, she did. She didn't even waste any time with it. She learned to drag herself by her front paws and somehow hop forward with the back part of her body. Didn't seem ashamed of it. That's just how she walked. And they said then she had the puppies. They were all healthy. The last line of it said this, and when they learned to walk, they all walked just like her. That's going to be me. I became petrified that even if no one touched my children, that the second-hand effects of my abuse, if I did not deal with it, was going to show up in them. And somehow, all of a sudden, you got to do something. It was years before I would tell you that I was experiencing full freedom. You just go through layers and layers of it. It was a deep stronghold, and it took some long and radical work. Anybody know what I'm talking about? But in the process of it, by the time my healing came, I knew my healer a whole lot better than I knew my healing. And I was in love forever. You understand what I'm saying? He was Prince Charming, and it was done. It was done. I would be in love for the rest of my life. That's what the course of that longevity gave me as a gift. What would it take for you and I to decide it would be worth it to seek healing? What would it take?